You do have to seek istighfar, but then after you seek istighfar, you're actually supposed to thank Allah, Ya Rabb, lakal hamd. Thank you for granting me the opportunity to seek istighfar. Allahu Akbar. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, actually, he mentions that if you did not sin, then Allah, He would wipe you out and He would replace you with the people who would sin and then they would seek istighfar. It just go to show, we're not perfect. As human beings, we all fall into sins. Kullu bani Adam khata. But the best of the sinners are those who at-tawwabin, those who repent to Allah. See, there are three conditions to Tawbatan Nasuha. Tawbatan Nasuha means sincere repentance, or repentance that fulfills the correct conditions in order that Allah may accept it. What are the three conditions? So you have to stop the sin itself. So you leave that sin altogether. So from that moment you make a commitment, you're not going to go back to it. What was the second and the third? You show remorse, correct, that's the second. And the third, you make a commitment to not go back to it, correct. So these are the three conditions for repentance. If you can do this, then Allah, He accepts that repentance. May Allah grant us all a good understanding. May Allah grant us all Tawbatan Nasuha. Mentioned in the books of the Salaf, and I think this is in Ibn Qayyim, rahimahullah's book, is that one of the, the beauty of sinning is that you get to experience something that the angels can't experience. No, the entire creation of Allah experiences His mercy. وَرَحْمَتِي وَسِعَتْ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ. Allah, He says that His mercy encompasses all things. So the entire creation gets to experience the mercy of Allah. But the angels, they don't get to experience the forgiveness of Allah because they don't sin. Because they don't have free will. Allah has not given them the ability to sin. So they cannot ask Allah for forgiveness. So you can experience the quality of Al-Ghaffar, something that other creation can't. Alhamdulillah. So as we begin, Allah, He mentioned in Surah An-Na'am, وَتِلْكَ حِجَّتُنَا آتَيْنَا إِبْرَاهِيمَ وَآتَيْنَاهَا إِبْرَاهِيمَ عَلَىٰ قَوْمِ. That this is the hujjah, the evidence we gave to Ibrahim alayhi salam over his people. What this means is Allah, He gave him the power to debate. Side note over here, many people today, take Speaker's Corner for example, they say that this is not the way to spread the deen. We're not supposed to go and debate and argue with people. You look at all of the Anbiya, what did they do? What is Ibrahim A.S. doing with his father and his people? Debating, arguing. Obviously, this is not negative arguing where they're just disputing with one another in a negative sense, where they're insulting one another. So rather Ibrahim A.S. and something we have to realize, that can you debate for the sake of Allah? We said yes. Correct, you can. You can debate for the sake of Allah, that you speak the truth. People may ask questions, you go back and forth a little bit. Ibrahim A.S., he was known for this. Wherever he would go, he would be debating with the people. But after he left his place and he was doing his hijrah and he was traveling towards Egypt, he stopped in another place where they were worshipping the sun, the moon, the stars. And so Ibrahim A.S., he stayed there for a while to debate with them. And it's mentioned in Surah An-Na'am. And so yes, we are allowed to debate with the people as long as it's based on evidence, as long as it's based on the truth, and we have the correct intentions, which is to establish the truth. And so Allah, He gave Ibrahim A.S. the power to debate, and He also gave him victory in that. May Allah grant us all a good understanding. And so today we want to discuss, just the final parts of the debate. We went over the majority of it last week. And we also want to see if we can find certain intricacies, just to marvel over. The Quran, one of its names is Al-HAJJ. And when you ponder deeply over some ayat, it leaves you amazed at times. There's always something that you can extract. This is something that the believer, we are supposed to be searching for with the Quran. Every single day, not a day should go by except that we all open the Quran and we recite some of the Quran. Not much, just a few ayat. And then we look at the meaning of it and we try to contemplate over it. And this is something we are supposed to be doing on a daily basis. There's no excuse not to do so. Work is not an excuse. Anything else, going on holiday is not an excuse. The Quran only enhances everything. If you have to go to work but you begin by reciting the Quran before you go to work, you'll find barakah upon barakah. Because وَهَذَا كِتَابٌ أَنزَلْنَاهُ مُبَارَكٌ. It is also a blessed book. That if you approach the Quran correctly with the correct intentions, not just to recite it, expecting, obviously we have the hadith, and it is true that for every letter of the Quran that you recite, how much rewards do you get? 10 hasanat for every letter. That's there. However, the meaning or the interpretation of that hadith was not always the same as we have it now. People today, they will open the Quran, they will recite it like a train, like a stuck record. They have no idea what they're saying. They'll close it. They're like, yay, 1,000 hasanat for me now. May Allah protect us. Yet there's also the danger that there are some people, when they open the Quran, they recite the Quran and the Quran curses them. Why is that? Because they don't implement it in their lives. They don't try to live by the Quran. May Allah protect us all from that. Rasulullah ﷺ, he also mentions of a type of people that when they recite the Quran, it doesn't go past their throats. Meaning they will recite it, they will use it on their tongues. They'll even say to the people, but it's not inside. Hypocrisy basically. May Allah again protect us. He mentions that they will be the dogs of Jahannam. Allahu Akbar. It's also mentioned, this is something regarding those of us, who have memorized some ayat, for example, that one of the punishments of the qabr is that a person who would study the Quran, let's say, or maybe he memorized the Quran, he did some hifz, and then he neglected it. So during the nights, and by the way, this is not only referring to the hafiz, this is not only referring to the person who's dedicated his entire life just to studying the Quran, the mufassirin. This is also regarding the normal believer, because we're all supposed to have a close relationship with the Quran. And so one of the punishments is a person, at night he would sleep and he would neglect the Quran. The Quran wouldn't keep him awake. And through the day, he wouldn't practice it. He wouldn't implement it in his life. And so there will be an angel smashing his head with a boulder in the qabr. And then the boulder will roll away. And during that time, Allah will cause the head to come back normal again. The angel will come back and he'll smash it again. And this is going to be a constant punishment up until Yawm al-Qiyamah for those who neglect the Quran. So again, may Allah protect us all. When we say that the believer is supposed to recite the Quran and have a good relation with the Quran every day, it's not a light thing, it's a really heavy thing. And today we call, a hafiz. The true meaning of a hafiz is one who preserves. Right? So we preserve the Quran with its meaning. We try to implement it. We try to guide the people with it. All of that is a hafiz. Not just a person who memorizes the Quran and he still can't even explain in detail just the first ayah, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. He can tell you it means all praises to the Lord of the worlds. Tell me more. Tell me in detail. Why all praise? Why should I praise him? Why is he the Lord of the worlds? Explain it in complete detail. It's the most simplest of ayat. Every single person should be able to do. And this only started happening in the past 100 years once the Caliphate broke down. Before that, Arabic was one of the main languages. It was being spread. It became the main official language in majority of the Islamic world. Only when the Caliphate broke down, then they started referring back to Latin. And they started changing it again. And now today is English. But only in the past 100 years, we'll find that the people, they stopped reciting the Quran and understanding it. That before, when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he mentions that for every letter you recite, you get 10 hasanat. This was not just to say you should just recite the Quran. This was motivation for the people to recite the Quran and ponder over its meanings. Because there was never a time in the entire history of Islam, up until the Caliphate broke down 100 years ago, where the people would recite the Quran, they wouldn't understand it and they would be okay with it. It was never the case. Look at history, study history. May Allah grant us all a good understanding again. May Allah protect us. As Allah, He mentions, قُلْ رَبِّ أَعْلَمُ بِهِمْ. Your Lord is most knowing of them. Now here's the thing. If a person did not have the means, did not have the resources, the judgment is left to Allah. He's Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. We expect that He will forgive them. But in today's day and age, let's say you have the resources, you have the means, then that's there. However, if you're in a state of ignorance, yes, they were ignorant, maybe they didn't understand, they didn't have, the translation of the Quran available, does that excuse them from seeking knowledge? From just, busying themselves with their work? Because that's the only thing that, will stop you from having a good relationship with the Quran, is when you busy yourself with work. But we find in multiple ahadith that those who just want to focus on their work, it's not a good sign. In the Quran, it's like Allah, He mentions shaitan, he threatens you, He wants to make you scared of poverty. For those who, they are not, they don't have fear of Allah, then Allah will place poverty right in front of their eyes, even if they are the richest of people. If your concerns are scattered amongst this dunya, your concern is nothing about the akhirah, then Allah will place poverty right in front of your eyes, even if you have wealth. Which is why you'll never be at peace. You always want more and more. Go and look at the richest people in the world today. Ask them if they are at peace with the amount of money they have. They're not. They're not, because they continue striving to build even more wealth. That's how it is. Rasulullah ﷺ mentions, if you direct all of your concern to the akhirah, Allah, He'll put that sakina in your heart. He'll grant you that true richness, ghina. wealth of the heart. You become at peace. You have qana, contentment. You are pleased with everything that you have. Allahu Akbar. May Allah grant us all a good understanding. May Allah grant us all contentment. As for the one who didn't even make an effort, he didn't even try to establish his relationship with Allah. And to establish your relationship with the Quran is to establish your relationship with Allah. If you don't have a relationship with the Quran, I'm sorry to say, you don't have a relationship with Allah. How can it be? If you don't have a relationship with the word of Allah, how can we claim to be close to Allah? May Allah protect us all. May Allah protect us all. May Allah grant us all closeness to Him. It just serves as a reminder for all of us, motivation, I hope, that every day, even if it's just one ayah, just make an effort, look into it, go on to Google, look at the translation, ask Allah to grant you an understanding, and then whenever you can, just ponder over it. Again, the Quran also is Muhaymin. One of the names of the Quran is Muhaymin, meaning that which bears witness. And this is also one of, more of a dangerous thing now, that let's say the Quran is being explained, and we don't try to implement it in our lives thereafter, then that becomes a witness against us. لِيُنذِرَ مَنْ كَانَ حَيًّا وَيَحِقَّ الْقَوْلُ عَلَى الْكَافِرِينَ Surah Yasin. That the Quran is there to warn those whose hearts are alive. Their hearts, they can respond to Allah. And to establish evidence against the disbelievers. So again, may Allah protect us. And so, whilst we gather over here, it's good to begin with a reminder that we should all rectify our intentions. That the person who comes over here and they are still thinking about their worldly life, they're thinking about their dunya, by the time they leave, they will not have benefited from this lecture or from any other lecture or from any other khutbah. But if a person can leave all the worldly thought behind and they can focus on Allah, they can have taqwa, be conscious of Allah, focus on Allah's sight upon you, focus on your relationship with Allah, and focus on your akhirah and your meeting with Allah, then you'll find that Allah will open your heart and He'll allow the nur of ilm to enter that heart, and you'll find that whatever lecture you go to has benefited you. By the end of that lecture, you won't forget, you'll be able to implement it. Again, may Allah perfect for us our intentions. And so to go over the story of Ibrahim A.S, again, some points to go over. It's all about perseverance. Lessons that we have to learn, lessons that we have to live by, is that how to attain closeness and nearness to Allah is by striving. We were mentioning the example of people just working, and because of that they don't actually establish their relationship with the Quran. It's mentioned as part of a hadith that when the people leave jihad, and also they start engaging in riba, and they just chase the tails of their cattle, meaning that all they do is chase money, and they become pleased with agriculture, meaning all they want is their wealth again, their food and their drink, then Allah will disgrace this ummah. And Allah will not lift that disgrace up until they return to their religion. If you look at the Sahaba, by the way, if you look at all the armies of during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or let's look at the army that went against the Byzantines during the time of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu. Were they, prepared soldiers that were training all the time? Or were they normal people like you and I? Merchants, normal Sahaba, normal people who went to the battle. Do you know of the story of this one occasion where the Byzantines, they had around 300,000, I think it was. Yeah. And the Sahaba, they were, I think, 1,000 or so. Or less than that. And so a group of them, the Jews from them, they came forth. 60,000, I'm just going to make it very, very short quickly. 60,000 came forth to fight against the Muslims. And so Khalid bin Walid, radiallahu anhu, he goes, give me 30 men. 30 men will go. Ya subhanallah. 30 men will go. They're like, no, take 60. So he went with 60 men versus 60,000. Do the calculation. And by the way, who are these people that he selected? He made a condition, he went around walking at night to see who was awake for tahajjud. Who was there, who was doing their ibadah, quality, who had that iman in their hearts. He picked them. And so you find 60 people, normal people, but they were righteous people. He took them and they beat 60,000. By the time you saw the 60,000, half of them were running away because they couldn't stand against the Muslims. And that's something for us to ponder over. That even when it comes today, we see the situation in Gaza. Who's supposed to be helping the people, the ummah? Dedicated armies or the actual normal believers. Each and every single one of us, we should have that strength of iman, that moral character. And it is iman that prevails over strength half the time. As Allah He mentions, كَم مِّن فِئَةٍ قَلِيلَةٍ غَلَبَتْ فِئَةً كَثِيرَةً بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. How many a time has a small group of people beaten or overcome a large group of people, all by the permission of Allah. Again, may Allah grant us all a good understanding. But coming back to the topic then, so doing jihad, striving, it begins also with ourselves. That even if we cannot do physical jihad, then we are doing tazkiyatun nafs. We are ensuring that our nafs is under discipline. We are controlling our tongue. How many of us can actually say by the time we leave the lecture that yes, we are trying our best on a daily basis to control our tongues when it comes to our spouses? And the arguments that we have. It's a very tough thing, yes. But it's something that we still have to do. It's something that we still have to do. And so when we are able to persevere, strive, then we become closer and closer to Allah. And something to also realize is that iman and tawakkul, it goes hand in hand. Iman, the more stronger your iman is, the stronger your tawakkul is. And with tawakkul, then whatever you do, you can expect Allah to open the way for you. And so to go over our recap very, very quickly, as we were discussing last week, where when the people, they saw their idols broken, they said, قَالُوا مَنْ فَعَلَ هَذَا بِآلِهَتِنَا إِنَّهُ لَمِنَ الظَّالِمِينَ. That who has done this to our idols, to our gods, certainly they are wrongdoers. And then the people, by the permission of Allah, Allah He caused them to remember that Ibrahim A.S. mentioned it before. And like we mentioned last week, this was all the plan of Allah. This is all the scheme of Allah, and He's guiding Ibrahim A.S. through it. And this is how, again, we have iman and tawakkul. You know that everything is in the plan of Allah. Everything that we do, when it comes to standing against the disbelievers, speaking the truth, or anything, it's all in the plan of Allah, and He is guiding us through it. So He caused some of the people to hear and to remember. So they said, قَالُوا سَمِعْنَا فَتًى يَذْكُرُهُمْ يُقَالُ لَهُ إِبْرَاهِيمُ. That we heard a young boy mentioning these idols, they call him Ibrahim. So قَالُوا فَأْتُ بِهِ عَلَىٰ أَعْيُنِ النَّاسِ لَعَلَّهُمْ يَشْهَدُونَ. So bring him forth, they said. The people said, bring him in front of the people so that we may all bear witness. Bear witness to what? To the punishment that we are going to give him for daring to touch our gods. But this was, again, like we mentioned, it was the plan of Ibrahim A.S. and also the plan of Allah. That when Ibrahim A.S. came forth and he said, قَالَ بَلْ فَعَلَهُ كَبِيرُهُمْ هَذَا. That rather, the biggest one over there which he left, he did it. فَاسْأَلُوهُمْ. So ask him, إِن كَانُوا يَنْطِقُونَ, if it can speak. And this is the moment, literally this is the moment where evidence now is established. As it's mentioned that the moment he said that, Allah, he says, فَرَجَعُوا إِلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ فَقَالُوا إِنَّكُمْ أَنْتُمُ الظَّالِمُونَ. That they returned, they came back to themselves. Of the meanings is, they returned to their senses. That, this one statement, ask that idol if it can speak, it made them realize that actually we are wrong. The idols cannot speak. Clearly we are worshipping that which has no power. So at this moment they realizing. And Allah, He mentioned this in the Quran for a specific reason. Of the hikmah is to help you and to let you know that Allah, He is present in all conversations. And every single feeling a person goes through, Allah, He is aware of it. He is al-Latif al-Khabir. And He is the most subtle, He is the all-aware. People may say things to you, they may insult you, they may cause you harm. You may see things that causes you grief. Allah, He knows all of it. And none of those feelings happen to you except by the permission of Allah. And it is all in the plan of Allah. Subhanallah. And so Allah, He mentions how these people, فَرَجَعُوا إِلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ فَقَالُوا إِنَّكُمْ أَنْتُمُ الظَّالِمُونَ. They returned and they blamed their own selves. So of the tafsirs given, the first is that they started arguing with one another for not appointing gods to defend their gods. Allahu Akbar, their idols. It doesn't make sense. Even in that case, they have established proof against them, because if you have to defend your ilah, then that does not make that thing an ilah. So something that would be produced, again, Allah's plan, establishing the evidence against them, they will be asked on Yawm al-Qiyamah about this. May Allah protect us. And the other meaning in the other tafsirs is also what the ulama explain, is that they checked their own hearts. فَرَجَعُوا إِلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ Anfus, their nafs. They went to their own nafs and they said, you are wrong. But this is when the kibr kicked in. This is when the kibr kicked in. And the moment the kibr kicked in, they turned back to Ibrahim A.S. ثُمَّ نُكِسُوا عَلَى رُؤُوسِهِمْ فَقَالُوا إِنَّ هَؤُلَاءِ يَنْطُقُونَ That you already know, O Ibrahim, that these idols do not speak. The moment they allowed this kibr to overtake them, they could have accepted the truth at that point. But when the people deny, after clear evidence has come to them, Allah, He mentions, خَتَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَى قُلُوبِهِمْ Allah, He seals the heart. So even after this now, their hearts are sealed. Nothing can be done for them anymore. And so then after that, Allah, He mentions, after they turn back to Ibrahim A.S. salam, and they said that you already know that these idols cannot speak. So you're just making a fool out of us. You're telling us to speak to these idols. Clearly, you're just, you're trying to ridicule us in front of all the people. This is nothing more than you, just having a laugh. So then after Ibrahim A.S. he responds with a powerful, powerful ayah. And we can say that the entire first half of Surah Ibrahim is a build-up to this one question that he asks. And قَالَ أَفَتَعْبُدُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ مَا لَا يَنْفَعُكُمْ شَيْئًا وَلَا يَضُرُّكُمْ A question even we have to ask ourselves. And قَالَ أَفَتَعْبُدُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ That do you worship, do you take in ibadah other than Allah, مَا لَا يَنْفَعُكُمْ شَيْئًا That cannot benefit you at all, وَلَا يَضُرُّكُمْ Nor can it harm you. There's multiple meanings to ibadah. Of them is to worship. Of them is to adore. That which you love. And do you take that which you place so much of love in your heart in for other than Allah, when it cannot truly benefit you or harm you? That also stands true. So for example, you take the people who take their own desires as their ilah. They choose to follow their desires rather than obeying Allah. Maybe something is a sin, or the people may know something is wrong, but they will still do it. And this is also part of hard-heartedness. And subhanAllah, I was just reading earlier today in a book that one of the signs of the qaswatul qalb, the hard heart, is that sins and the permissible, the halal and the haram, it becomes indifferent to you. That when you're not worried about whether is this halal or is this haram, or is this a righteous deed, or is this a sin, and that's a sign that the heart has become hard. And as we know, the ulama have explained also that the qaswatul qalb, the hard heart, is the severest punishment any person can receive from Allah in this life. Not the bombs that you see, not all the pain that you may see physically, but the hard heart. Why is that? Because if you have the hard heart, you will not turn back to Allah. You will not seek istighfar. And you will just be continuing with your sins up until it builds up until you die, and then the severest punishment would be awaiting these people. The danger of it is that we could be sitting over here in the masjid, yet we could still have a hard heart. How many people they come for the salah on a daily basis, but their lives don't improve. They're still vulgar with the people. Their character is still the worst of character. They have no sense of honor or nobility in their akhlaq, in the way they behave. Take for example, and again, this comes down to the fiqh of da'wah. If a person comes to the masjid, if it's his first time here, maybe his phone rings, maybe some music plays, okay, you tell him nicely. Usually, if a person is just coming and you tell him, he listens. But half the time what we see with the people, and it's been happening today, early on it happened, yesterday it happens all the time, that a person's phone will ring. But that's not the only problem. But rather it's music. It's the word, the voice of shaitan. The sawt of shaitan as defined in the Quran is instruments. It doesn't matter whether it's electronic instruments. Instruments are the voice of shaitan. And you're playing that in the house of Allah. And these are the very same people who's coming every single day for all of their salah. You're telling me that that's not a qaswatul qalb, a hard heart? Now, how is their salah benefiting them? How is your salah benefiting you? If you're not wanting to do righteous deeds by the time you get to the end of your salah, how has that salah benefited you? Imam Qurtubi in his tafsir, he mentions, inna salata tanha anil fahsha'i wal munkar. That your salah is supposed to be a barrier for you against sins, against munkar and fahisha. So if you are not staying away from it, and he mentioned in the tafsir, it means that your salah is a means of your punishment. It's a dangerous statement. Your salah is a means of your destruction. Because the people, they don't have khushu', they're not focusing in their salah, they're not fulfilling the arkan of salah correctly. People rushing through their salah, for example. They're not ensuring that the positions they are in is done correctly. They are not ensuring that they're trying to understand what they are saying. And so because they didn't have khushu' in that salah, they left that salah. And after they finished that salah and they went away, they continued doing the same sins, the exact same sins. People say, I'm disobedient, I'm failing to obey Allah. I cannot control my desires. I cannot control or, bring myself or leave certain bad habits. Well, look at your salah. Inna salata tanha. Literally, this is the answer. You want to leave bad habits? Look at your salah. Simple. If your salah is not helping you leave the bad habits, then your salah is broken and it's a means of your destruction, and you need to fix it and I need to fix it. May Allah protect us and grant us all a good understanding. So, قَالَ أَفَتَعْبُدُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ. Do you take in worship other than Allah? This also refers to the different types of fitan and shubuhat that we see today. Take the ideologies, take the isms, whether it be nationalism. By the way, nationalism, which we still see rife in the ummah today, is the very disease that actually broke down the Caliphate. When we saw the rise of, the nationalists all across the globe, with Europe and other places, and also within the ummah, people now, they wanted to be recognized, not as the ummah, but with their own nationalities, away from a certain land. When this happened, then the Caliphate broke. Allah, He broke this ummah apart. And we're seeing it up until this day. If you see a person, he comes from a specific place, he'll be doing something that's not part of the sunnah, and you tell him that this is not part of the sunnah, but I'm from this land and we do it back in our land. And my parents before me also used to do this. Literally exactly the same as the people of Ibrahim. قَالُوا آبَاءَنَا لَهَا عَابِدِينَ. We saw our forefathers, our parents, just like this. When you tell a person that, look, people, they will say that you need to know your mother tongue. Have you ever come across this? Or have you perhaps ever said this to your children? You need to know your mother tongue. What about Arabic? Is this not the language of your deen, the language you're going to be speaking in Jannah? People who say this, or you need to know your heritage, you need to know your roots. Your roots begin in the cave of Hira, where the wahi came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because this is the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If you and I want to be known by other than this, and قَالَ أَفَتَعْبُدُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ, are you taking in ibadah other than Allah? Because part of ibadah, submittance, when you submit to Allah, that's part of the meaning of ibadah. When you subject yourself to the rules and the laws of Allah, that is also ibadah. When you obey, that is part of ibadah. When you fear, that is part of ibadah. So when you say you worship Allah, وَقَالَ أَفَتَعْبُدُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ, you are also saying, do you fear other than Allah? This is also part of the meaning. مَا لَا يَنْفَعُكُمْ شَيْئًا وَلَا يَضُرُّكُمْ. Allah, He mentioned in Surah Ma'idah that وَمَنْ لَمْ يَحْكُمْ بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْكَافِرُونَ. And He emphasizes it 3 times in total. In another ayah, فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْفَاسِقُونَ. And in another ayah, فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الظَّالِمُونَ. That those who do not judge, those who do not make their decisions by the book of Allah. And in extension to the book of Allah is the sunnah, because the sunnah is being preserved as the explanation and the application of the Qur'an. So those who do not try to live by the Qur'an and the sunnah, to put it simply, they have committed kufr, fisq and dhulm. Now the first question you will have is, does that mean then, if I'm not obeying, if I'm not living by the Qur'an and sunnah, am I a kafir? Have I left the fold of Islam? The answer to that is no. You have committed minor kufr. Minor kufr is different from major kufr. So you have major kufr where you leave the fold of Islam, and to become a Muslim again you have to retake the shahada and leave whatever it is of kufr that we did. But minor kufr is where you are still a Muslim, but you have committed a sin worse than the major sins. So for example, leaving the salah. As we know, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said the only thing that is between us and the disbeliever is the salah. And so the one who abandons his salah, he has committed kufr. And this is true. The one who does not offer his salah, he has committed kufr. But this is not major kufr. This is minor kufr. All of the salaf, they agreed upon this, that this is minor kufr. So he's still a Muslim, that person is still a Muslim, but he's committing a sin. Every time he misses a salah, he is committing a sin worse than the major sins. So to say that for you to neglect a salah, for you to miss fajr, For you to miss Asr perhaps is worse than murder in the sight of Allah. That stands true. It's something we have to realize. May Allah protect us. But that stands true. To miss one salah is worse than rape and murder in the sight of Allah, because it's worse than the major sins. May Allah protect us all. May Allah grant us all consistency with our salah. قَالَ أَفَتَعْبُدُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ. All these ideologies and the isms that we have today, be it nationalism, like we mentioned, or sectarianism, like how, the ummah today, we want to delve into that. May Allah protect us. Or any of the other ideologies that we have, capitalism, communism, all these things. This is all far apart, far away, ba'id. It is far away from the Quran and the Sunnah. And so we have to take the Quran and the Sunnah as that which we implement in our lives. We follow the rules, we follow the law, the Sharia of Allah. And then he says, أُفِّ لَكُمْ وَلِمَا تَعْبُدُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ. And uff to you and whatever you worship other than Allah. Again, uff is a word of rejection, you could say, or frustration. And in the same way, for those who want to take wealth as their ilah, uff to that, we say. We take the example of Ibrahim A.S, that you want fame, you want, the love of fame, it has overtaken your heart. We see today people, they will do whatever they do simply to get likes and subscribes on their Instagram and their Facebook and their Twitter and their YouTube. And they will do things specifically for that, corrupted intentions. Those who have taken fame as their ilah. أُفِّ لَكُمْ وَلِمَا تَعْبُدُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ. Don't you know who Allah is? Literally the most famous. All of His creation knows Him. Those who take wealth as their ilah. Literally, you find people today, the example we give. If somebody has to call you at 1 o'clock in the morning, actually let's make it better, tahajjud time, 3 o'clock in the morning, and say, look, there's £1 million waiting for you if you get up and if you offer tahajjud. You will jump out of bed. These people will jump out of bed. They will run to the bathroom, not walk, they will run to the bathroom and they'll start offering their salah for that £1 million. أُفِّ لَكُمْ وَلِمَا تَعْبُدُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ. That you took wealth as your ilah, that you placed money or wealth above Allah. This is also encaptured in the meaning. May Allah protect us. And be it anything that you love more than Allah, and that's a dangerous sign. Again, we've been over in the past, we'll ask the question again, how can you tell? How can you check your heart to see whether you love Allah the most or you love other things? Whether it be lahu. Lahu is entertainment. People today, they will literally, what's the term used? Binge watch Netflix the entire night. And still they are missing their salah. At the time of tahajjud, they are not awake. They will wake up, like we mentioned. If a person has to call you offering you a business deal, you would wake up, but then these people don't wake up for tahajjud and fajr. So this is a sign, what you do at night and the way you behave when you're alone also, it's a sign of what you truly love. If you find your joy and your comfort and your peace when you're playing the PS5, that's not a good sign, because now you're saying, or what your heart is saying rather, your actions are saying that your heart has taken lahu as your ilah. Lahu being vain entertainment. Or for those who all they want to do is, listen to music all the time. We find people, they listen to music all the time. From the moment they wake up, they're playing their music. They've taken lahu as their ilah. Lahu means vain speech. May Allah protect us. Because the believer who's trying to be like Ibrahim A.S, ثُمَّ أَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْكَ أَنِ اتَّبِعْ مِلَّةَ إِبْرَاهِيمَ حَنِيفًا. It has been revealed to Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Allah mentioned in Surah Nahl that you have to follow the millah, the religion of Ibrahim A.S, the original man of Tawheed. So every single Muslim is supposed to be like this. That to all of these things that you have, that you could take as an ilah, uff to all of it. أُفِّ لَكُمْ وَلِمَا تَعْبُدُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ. Can we not use our reason? That if you love wealth, don't you know Allah is the Lord of wealth? If you get close to Allah, He's going to give it to you anyway. You want fame, you want the people to love you, you want to be recognized. Don't you know, if you get close to Allah, Allah will place acceptance for you on the earth anyways. You don't need to go and strive for the likes and the subscribes. You don't need to go and strive for the wealth. Just get close to Allah, Allah will give it to you anyways. أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ. Can you not use your aql? Can you not reason that the one who owns everything, if you are close to Him, anything you ask for, Rasulullah ﷺ mentions in the hadith regarding the wali of Allah, that وَلَئِنْ سَأَلَنِي, if my wali, or the one who's close and beloved to me, has to ask me for anything, لَأُعْطِيَنَّ, I will definitely give it to him. And the emphatic lam is used here, meaning Allah is saying that without a doubt, we will definitely give it to him, and nothing would prevent us from giving it to him. Again, just get close to Allah. The ulama, they mentioned, they have not found anything better to get closer to Allah than tahajjud. To wake up in the last third of the night and to offer salah at that time. It is the most beloved of deeds after the farad, after the obligations that Allah has made obligatory upon us. May Allah grant us all a good understanding. May Allah grant us all closeness to Him. And so we continue the ayat. Allah, He says that قَالُوا حَرِّقُوهُ وَانْصُرُوا آلِهَتَكُمْ إِن كُنْتُمْ فَاعِلِينَ. That when they were beaten in the debate, and usually when it comes even today, that when you beat a person intellectually, what do they refer back to then as a final resort, if they don't want to accept the truth? What? They will arrest you. Allahu Akbar. True? What? No, but even when they've been beaten in that sense, as we know, Ibrahim A.S, he literally said, you and your forefathers are all astray. فِي ضَلَالٍ بَعِيدٍ Mubin. Then they start threatening you. And this is exactly what they did with Ibrahim A.S. And this is something you'll find that what Allah mentioned of the people, those with kibr in their hearts, those with arrogance in their hearts, is that they will always behave the very same way. That first, they will be beaten intellectually. They will be beaten just using normal common sense. They will be beaten with evidence. And once they have no other way, then they will always refer back to harming you. All of the Anbiya, it happened with all of them. Allahu Akbar. قَالُوا حَرِّقُوهُ Burn him. That's what they said. Burn him. وَانْصُرُوا آلِهَتَكُمْ And support and help your broken idols. إِن كُنْتُمْ فَاعِلِينَ If you are going to do anything, then this is your course of action. And so they started gathering a fire. It's mentioned in certain reports that they started building or preparing this fire over 40 days. They built a deep trench and they started filling it with the wood. 40 days. They started preparing this fire for 40 days. Well, you see, this is the thing, because now they want to teach a lesson. But don't forget, like we mentioned, this was the plan of Allah. When they debated, when, Ibrahim A.S. breaking down the idols, this is all by the guidance of Allah. This is the plan of Allah. And then when all the people were gathered, and then he said, ask this big idol here if he can speak. And it dumbfounded them. And they all, admitted to themselves the truth. This is also part of the plan of Allah. And now they're going to burn him. That's also part of the plan of Allah. Because the best part is still to come. The clear evidence is still to come. And Allah is going to establish the truth. And so As-Suddi, he mentions that if a woman was sick, she would make a vow that if she recovered, she would also go and bring wood to burn Ibrahim A.S. So they made a huge hole in the ground, they set it aflame, and it burned with huge sparks. It was a huge fire with immense flames. And there had never been a fire like it before. And then what they did, and it's mentioned the fire became so hot that if a bird was flying above it, it would literally be incinerated and falling because the heat was so much. Which is why they couldn't even go close to it. So what they did, a Kurdish man, he came from Persia, and he made the suggestion to tie him onto a catapult and to fling him into the fire. So when the time came, and subhanallah, imagine at this point, your own father is against you. Your own father wants to now throw you into a fire. But that's not it. First, what they did is they stripped him down. Literally, they stripped him down and they dragged him and paraded him through the streets. That's, subhanallah, the humiliation that he had to go through, which is why Rasulullah ﷺ has mentioned that the first person to be clothed on Yawm al-Qiyamah. On Yawm al-Qiyamah, we will all be coming out of our graves, we'll be resurrected, we will be naked, we will be uncircumcised. Exactly the way Allah created us the first time around. And then a person, according to his piety and how close he was to Allah, will be clothed. So let's say if you are really close to Allah, then the angel will come to you really quickly and they'll give you the clothes, which then you'll be able to hide that which is supposed to be hidden. Now subhanallah, the first person though, he mentions, to be clothed, is Ibrahim alayhi salam. Even before him, before Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Ibrahim alayhi salam shall be clothed on Yawm al-Qiyamah as a result to honor him because of this humiliation that he has to go through, or he had to go through during this time. And also part of the dua, وَلَا تُخْزِنِي يَوْمَ يُبْعَثُونَ. He was, after he left the place, he was making dua to Allah that do not humiliate me on Yawm al-Qiyamah. Part of this dua is regarding his father, because وَغْفِرْ لِأَبِي إِنَّهُ كَانَ مِنَ الضَّالِّينَ. First he said that I'm going to make dua for you, O father, because clearly you're astray. But then after that, Allah he mentions, or rather it's mentioned in the tafsir, that he only made this dua for a time, but when it became clear that his father was going to be dying as a mushrik, that he has committed shirk and he's a kafir, he stopped making dua for him. Because it's a rule in Islam. We are not allowed to make dua for the disbelievers or for the mushrikeen. Meaning, whilst they are alive, you can ask Allah to guide them, to open their heart to the truth. But if it becomes clear to you that a person has died upon shirk or kufr, you're not allowed to make dua for them. We are not allowed to make dua for them. May Allah protect us all from that. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Allah did not give him permission to make dua for his own parents because they died upon kufr and shirk. So that should be something. If the beloved of Allah himself was not given permission, we see people today, no, but Allah's merciful, I'm still going to make dua, Ya Allah have mercy on them. Ya Allah is the most merciful, I'm sure He's not going to punish them. No.
But there are some...
Inna wa'adallahi haqq. The promise of Allah is true. When He said, لَأَمْلَأَنَّ جَهَنَّمْ, that I'm going to fill Jahannam with the disbelievers, He's not going to break His word, because He is Al-Kareem, the most honorable. And any person of honor amongst us humankind, if we give you our word, if you have any honor, do you think they're going to break it? If a person comes to you tomorrow and gives you his word, you're not going to expect him to break his word if he has any honor, even the smallest ounce of honor. What about the Lord of honor? Do you expect him to break his word just because now little slave is asking, Ya Allah, have mercy on them? May Allah protect us all, may Allah grant us all the correct attitude towards this. And so it's mentioned, this person who suggested to tie him to a catapult and throw him. His name was Hazan. And Allah caused the earth to swallow him. Allah caused the earth to swallow two people. The first was Qarun, with his wealth. And this was the second person. And it's mentioned also that he would be sinking. What? Hazan. Yeah. And he would be falling up until Yawm al-Qiyamah. And so when they flung him, and now the time came, what is the dua that he said? Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakeel. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned that this is the dua he made when he was about to be flung. And when he was flung, subhanallah, it was otherworldly. That the moment he's flung, it's almost as though there's invisible stairs. That he's walking into the fire. This is how Allah He supports him. And when he goes into the fire, Allah He mentions in the next ayah, قُلْنَا, we said, Ya nar, O fire, kuni barda, be coolness, bardan wa salaman, and peace ala Ibrahim, upon Ibrahim A.S. It's mentioned that at this moment, just before he was flung, the angel that controls the rains, he was questioning, when am I going to be commanded to release the rains to turn off that fire? And it's mentioned in the tafsir that Allah's command was swifter. And this part is amazing. That imagine, this is what you call direct divine intervention, where Allah He intervenes Himself. He doesn't command the angel to drop the rain, to cause the rain to fall. Nothing like that. It's a direct command. He says to the fire, Ya nar kuni bardan wa salaman ala Ibrahim. That when you're close to Allah, then nothing gets in the way. Now you can expect the direct help of Allah. May Allah grant us all a good understanding. But just thinking about it, imagine Allah directing His attention to the fire. And He's saying, you got to be cool for Ibrahim A.S. You got to be easy. And also peace. The ulama, they explained, if Allah said, just be burden, be coolness, then Ibrahim A.S. would have been harmed by the cold. Which is why Allah He mentioned also, wasalaman, and also peace. So that time in the fire, it becomes peace for Ibrahim. So the only thing that burnt when he entered the fire was that which tied his hands together, the ropes. So after that, he was free. And then he walked out the fire. And by the way, when he's being thrown into the fire mid-air, and then it's as though he's walking into the fire, the people are seeing this. They are shocked. They are astonished. What is this? But at this point, even though this evidence is there, like we mentioned, this was the plan of Allah. Allah's plan to establish evidence. They can see it with their own eyes now. He's walking mid-air into a fire and they're still not believing because now Allah has sealed their hearts. And then he walks out the fire. Ibrahim A.S. just strolls out the fire, he's fine. And the people look and they are shocked. How is this possible? The hottest fire, a bird would fall into it. They prepared it for 40 days. And this little child just walks out. And still they didn't believe. So, thus, evidence is established against them. لِيُنْذِرَ مَنْ كَانَ حَيًّا وَيُحِقَّ الْقَوْلُ عَلَى الْكَافِرِينَ. Now evidence is established, but not only for his people, because this is now a lesson for the entirety of mankind to come after that. It's a lesson that we are still benefiting from up until this day. Such is the plan, such is the hikmah of Allah, that when He does something, even if it's for a small group of people, the entirety of mankind thereafter benefits from it. Allahu Akbar. That's just one of the mercies, one of the wisdoms that we can take from this. And so that was the showdown that Ibrahim A.S. had with the people. We finally get to the final part, which is the ultimate showdown which happens on Yawm al-Qiyamah. Allah, He mentions, and this is in Surah Shu'ara, powerful ayat, that وَأُزْلِفَتِ الْجَنَّةُ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ, that Allah will bring close on Yawm al-Qiyamah Jannah to those who had taqwa of Him. وَبُرِّزَتِ الْجَحِيمُ لِلْغَاوِينَ, and He's going to display Jahannam in all of its terrifying nature to the deviators. The day when Jahannam is brought forth and you see Jahannam, subhanallah, 70,000 chains, and in each chain is 70,000 angels. And Allahu A'lam how big these angels are, when we know that there are some angels the size of mountains. Take the Hamalatul Arsh, for example, the angels that are carrying the throne. It's mentioned that the distance between their ears and their shoulders is 700 years worth of travel. That if a bird has to fly from the shoulder to reach the earlobe of that angel, it would take them 700 years. What could you make of these angels bringing Jahannam? Allahu A'lam. What could you make of the size of Jahannam? When Allah, He mentions, or rather Rasulullah SAW, He mentions that the disbelievers, Allah will make them enormous before they are flung into the fire. So much so that it would take 3 days to travel from one side of their shoulder to the next. And the size of one of their teeth is the size of Mount Uhud. Who's been to Medina? Who's seen Mount Uhud? How big is it? Now imagine this one tooth being the size of Mount Uhud. Why is Allah going to make them so big? Because that which is bigger takes longer to burn. So more pain for them. Allahu Akbar. That's Dhul Jalali wal Ikram, the Lord of Majesty, Might and Honor. May Allah protect us all from Jahannam. Allahumma ajirna min an-nar. And then the question will be asked, Aynama kuntum ta'budun. Where are those that you used to worship? Min dunillah. Other than Allah. Allah will ask this question. Hal yansurunakum aw yantasirun? Can they help you? Can they help themselves? No. فَكُبِكُبُوا فِيهَا هُمْ وَالْغَاوُونَ. So they will all be overturned head first into Jahannam, Allah mentions. Hum refers to those idols. So we know that there are going to be certain entities that were taken as idols that will be in Jahannam. For example, the sun and the moon, they are going to be in Jahannam, and they are fuel for the fire. Now this does not mean that Allah is punishing them. Rather, it's not going to be a punishment for them, for the sun and the moon. Rather, it's going, they are just fulfilling their purpose. They are not going to be harmed in Jahannam, but they are the fuel of the fire. On Yawm al-Qiyamah, it's mentioned that, when Allah, He joins the sun and the moon together, it's mentioned in Surah Qiyamah, and then He's going to fling, and you're going to see the sun and the moon just being tossed into Jahannam, and then Jahannam is going to start raging. That's when Allah, He mentions, تَغَيُّذًا وَزَفِيرًا, that you're going to hear it rage, and it's going to be sighing. سَمِعُوا لَهَا شَهِيقًا وَهِيَ تَفُورٌ. You're going to hear it almost as though it wants to burst out of anger the moment it sees. Imagine, Jahannam has been created for man. Jahannam has been created for the evil people amongst man. Imagine how Jahannam is going to behave the very first time it sees man. It's a terrifying thing. The moment the people see Jahannam on that day, not a single person will remain standing. They will fall flat on their faces in sujood, asking Allah to protect them from Jahannam. That's going to be the situation. فَكُبْكِبُوا فِيهَا هُمْ وَالْغَاوُونَ وَجُنُودُ إِبْلِيسَ أَجْمَعُونَ قَالُوا وَهُمْ فِيهَا يَخْتَصِمُونَ. They're going to start arguing with one another, and we'll finish on this note inshaAllah, and we'll begin our Qiyam al-Layl. So they're going to start arguing with one another in Jahannam. They're going to start blaming shaitan, and then they're going to go to other people, they're going to blame their leaders. And they will say, Tallahi in kunna lafi dalalin mubin. By Allah, we were certainly astray. إِذْ نُسَوِّيكُمْ بِرَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. When we took you as equals with Rabbul Alameen. وَمَا أَضَلَّنَا إِلَّا الْمُجْرِمُونَ, they will say. And none sent us astray except the criminals. We decided to follow the criminals, and they led us very far astray. Something we can all ponder over. Who do we take as an influence in today's day and age? Which celebrity or footballer are we trying to be like today? We're copying their haircuts. We're copying the way they walk. We're copying the way they talk. وَمَا أَضَلَّنَا إِلَّا الْمُجْرِمُونَ. But these very same criminals who have no sense of taqwa, who have no sense of fear of Allah, led them far astray. فَمَا لَنَا مِنْ شَافِعِينَ. So now today there's no intercessors for us. Who can intercede with us and ask Allah to help us? They will make dua, the response will not come for 1,000 years. When the response comes, Allah will say, قَالَ اخْسَؤُوا فِيهَا وَلَا تُكَلِّمُونَ. Remain in Jahannam and don't ever speak to me again. Allahu Akbar. They will ask Malik, the gatekeeper of Jahannam, ask your Lord just to lighten the punishment. Malik will say, no lightening of the punishment for you. So فَمَا لَنَا مِنْ شَافِعِينَ. Who can intercede for these people on Yawm al-Qiyamah? They had the chance to accept when فَرَجَعُوا إِلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ, like we mentioned, when they checked their own souls and they realized they were wrong. At that moment they could have saved themselves simply by repenting, but look at now the result for them and for many who follow in their path. وَلَا صَدِيقٍ حَمِيمٍ. Allah, He continues to say, and they have no friend, no comforting friend to grant them any comfort. In this life, we all have that comforting friend that you may be going through a difficulty and somebody will come to give you a pat on the shoulder, tell you everything's going to be okay. That's a comforting friend. That's a hamim. Sadiqin hamim. They will have no friend to comfort them when they are in Jahannam. Allahu Akbar. And what will they say? What is the final thing they will say? A powerful ayah. فَلَوْ أَنَّ لَنَا كَرَّةً فَنَكُونَ مِنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. If only we could go back to the earth for 1 second, so I can be a believer, so I can believe in Allah, and then I can go to Jannah. إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَةً. In that is a sign for the people. وَمَا كَانَ أَكْثَرُهُمْ مُؤْمِنِينَ. But majority of the people you'll find that they won't believe despite seeing the signs. وَإِنَّ رَبَّكَ لَهُوَ الْعَزِيزُ الرَّحِيمُ. And your Lord is the most mighty in punishment and the most merciful to those who seek His repentance. And with that, we'll keep it over there. We'll end it over there. May Allah grant us all a good understanding. May Allah grant us all the ability to be like Ibrahim A.S. Allahumma inna nas'aluka qalban salima. We ask Allah to grant us all the sound heart, a heart that is completely free of every type of shirk, major and minor. وَلِسَانٌ صَادِقًا. And a tongue that is always truthful, no matter what, not fearing the people, doesn't matter. No matter who it is, we will always speak the truth, fearing Allah alone. May Allah grant us all that sense of khashya. Allahumma inna nas'aluka khashyataka fil ghaybi wa shahada. We ask Allah to grant us the sense of fear of Him in private and also in public. So even when we are alone, we are not transgressing the boundaries and we are remembering the sight of Allah and the presence of Allah with us. And also in public, so that we do not sell ourselves short, just trying to appease the people or trying to win the people's approval or anything as such. Allahumma ja'al khayra a'malina akhirah wa khayra a'malina khawatimah wa ja'al khayra ayyamana yawman alqaq. اللهم زدنا ولا تنقصنا وأكرمنا ولا تهنا وأعطنا ولا تحرمنا وآرثنا ولا تؤثر علينا وارضنا وارض عنا. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم. اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا وارزقنا علما تنفعنا به. ربنا زدنا علما ربنا زدنا علما ربنا زدنا علما. اللهم اجعلنا من أهل القرآن اللهم اجعلنا من أهل القرآن اللهم اجعلنا من أهل القرآن. وصلى الله على نبينا محمد